Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse.
Who's using this? God does not exist. He is no more real than Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, or even the Boogeyman. Like those monsters under the bed that are hiding in the closet, he's made up. He's our imagination. God didn't create us. We created God. Is God real? Yes, no, maybe. When I was getting ready for this, it was kind of hard because most of the other two times that I've gotten up here and talked, I had a little bit of freedom. I could pretty much say whatever. I mean, I couldn't be heretical or nothing, but I could say pretty much whatever I wanted and talk about whatever I felt like. But this time I was given a topic. I was told that I had to talk about whether or not God was real. Okay, no problem. Except I did have a problem. If you're not God's real, can you really use a passage from a book that claims to be written by somebody who may not be real? You haven't established that yet. So I didn't know what to do. Every time I've ever talked, it's been about a part of the Bible. And like I said, if you haven't answered whether or not God exists, you can't really use a book that is written by somebody or something that may not be there. So to study for this one, I went to the school library and punched up the old internet, as little as I know about the internet, and punched up the word atheism. Figured I'd try to learn what they think and what they say. And so I was doing that and came across a few hits on atheism, and one of the first ones I came across was this thing called faith atheism. And right there at the beginning of the hit, it said, we believe that we cannot prove that God exists, but we also admit that we cannot prove that God does not exist. We believe that it takes faith. And that kind of struck me as odd because the very thing that they began their hit with by ripping apart those who believe in God, those who say that God is real, is saying that it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It takes too much faith. It's not smart. And yet here they are basing their whole belief system on the very thing that they rip apart. They rip apart God's followers for. And what I want you to realize is that to make statements like I made when I got up here, it takes a lot of faith. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether or not you say, yes, God exists, or no, God does not exist, or, well, maybe, I'm not sure where you fall on the maybes, but it doesn't matter if you answer that question yes or no, you have faith in your answer. Because if you can't prove that he does exist, you have to admit that you can't prove that he doesn't, so you have to have faith in something. And what I want to do is try to point to a couple of things like that all of us have, that all of us have access to, that all of us can see, that maybe lead us to the fact that God is real. Because I can't really hide, which side of the fence I fall on since I'm up here talking, and since I work for a church and stuff. I guess it's pretty obvious what my answer to that question would be. But one of the biggest things I think that points us to whether or not God is real is our conscience, something that every one of us has. If God's not real, then why in the world do you have morals? Why in the world do you differentiate between what is good and what is bad if God's not real? Because who's to say? If we've evolved from, little somethings and to the humans that we are now, and all human beings are exactly the same, there's no differentiating between you and me. We're all humans, and that's the highest thing that people that anything can evolve into. Then who's to say whether what I say is good or what you say is good? That's a lot of goods, but Who's to say? Who's to make the difference? Suppose I think it's okay to go out and kill 84,000 people, if there's no God, why can't I? Because if I'm going to deny God, then what's going to happen to me after, I'm here on earth? And, well, nothing. That's what most atheists believe. In fact, just about every atheist I've ever met has said that, you're dead, that's it, it's over. So why shouldn't I just do whatever I want, while I'm here and get the most out of it and have the most fun? But people don't live like that. They don't do that. They live by morals. Have you ever felt guilty for doing something? Man, I felt guilty all the time. Well, why do we feel guilty? Why do we feel guilty about doing something unless there's something better than ourselves to tell us what's right and what's wrong? Why is it that, kings and rulers come and mourn the death of this little peasant lady who spent her whole life, working with just dirty, diseased people over in Calcutta, India? Why do we admire her for that? Why is her funeral on television? Why is that honorable? Why, when Mother Teresa died, did people think that she was a great lady? If all life is getting the most out of it while you're here, because it's going to be over, then people in the history of the world, because she didn't do anything for herself. We respect her. We think she was a great lady. Well, why? And some people say, well, you get your morals from your parents. You get your conscience, you get that from your parents, you're taught. Okay, well, where did they get it from? Well, they got it from their parents, your grandparents. Okay, well, what about them, And go on and on. Well, where did the first person ever get it from? Where did the first person ever on this earth get their morals from? What, they just decided that's how life should be lived, and this is what's right and this is what's wrong, and everybody on the planet now has to follow what that one person thought? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Where did they get their morals from? Where did it start? Where did it start? You either have to decide that people have made up their own morals, that one person did, or you have to decide that there's something greater than ourselves. There's something higher than ourselves that could decide what is right and what is wrong. It's just a choice, and whichever choice you make, it's faith. There's other things too. I like to look at the Bible and see things that have come true, that have already come true. See things that are talked about in the Bible, and there are a lot of predictions that the Bible makes. And there's two kinds. There's those that have come true and those that haven't come true. That's pretty simple. Now, the ones that haven't come true, the skeptic would say, well, that's because they're never going to. Whereas a believer would say, it's because they haven't yet. Okay, well, I'm not going to talk about the ones that haven't come true. I want to talk about the ones that have come true. And I'm not talking about, things that you can debate whether or not. You can't argue that these things are true. In Genesis, God says to Abraham, he says, your name's going to be great. Things like that. He tells Abraham, this little poor farmer, he says, your name's going to be great. And I don't know if you knew this, but today, 3 of the major religions in the world, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, all claim lineage to Abraham. They all claim him as either their family line through him or their religious heritage through him. That's about, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 billion people. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, you can't deny that Abraham's name is great. Because it is. 3 billion, that's a lot of people. I'd be like if I found 300, I think, that knew who I was. 3 billion. So you can't deny that. Or in the book of Daniel, he has this dream and he makes predictions about these kingdoms and these empires. And he prophesies people like Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Persians, and all these empires. And says, this is what's going to happen, and they're going to fall to these people. You can go look in any history book. You don't have to look in the Bible. You can look in a history book and see that happened. You see that those people existed. You can see, it was there. It was true. It happened. It was a prediction that was made that came true. Now, there was a mathematician that, and I don't understand how they figured out the probabilities, but you understand probabilities, like say you have 10 marbles and 9 of them are blue and one of them is red, then you have a 1 in 10 chance of picking a red marble. It's something like that, And they figured out the probabilities of of somebody being able to make all these predictions and having them come true. And the number, I can't tell you what it was, not because I didn't see it, but because I don't know what you call it. I know it goes, million, then billion, then trillion. Does anybody know what comes next? I have no idea what comes after that. But it was a few more after that. It was a big number. But to illustrate it, they said that it's the equivalent of taking a silver dollar, which is probably about that big, taking a silver dollar and covering the state of Texas with silver dollars. Okay, and not just covering the state of Texas with silver dollars, but covering the state of Texas 18 inches high in silver dollars. Okay, you can imagine 18 inches high silver dollars in this room would be plenty. Okay, you'd be a rich person. But the state of Texas, which is like 2-something million square miles, covered 18 inches high in silver dollars, all heads up. And on one of those silver dollars, you marked an X on the tail side. Now the odds of somebody getting all those predictions right, making all those predictions, having them all come true, is the same as a person reaching into all those silver dollars and picking the one that was marked with an X. That's not a religious person that said that. It's not even a Christian that said that. That was just a mathematician who came up with probabilities and said this is what the chances are. Do you know anybody who's that good at predicting the future? You ever seen anybody win the lottery 10 times? No? Any of you sports fans know a lot of people that picked Utah in the final game? No, probably not. People aren't that good at predicting the future. So how do you get all those things right? How could somebody get all those predictions right? Unless maybe there was something greater at work. Unless maybe there was something greater than human beings involved. You can either chalk it up to chance, luck, good guessing, or to planning. A lot of people argue too, about how we got here. You can look and see that, in school, evolution is taught, stuff like that. How did we get here? Obviously, the Bible says something different than that. It says that we were created. It doesn't necessarily say how, other than that God spoke us into existence, formed us out of the dust. But it says that we were created. Okay? So were we created or were we evolved? Okay? And which one takes more faith? To believe that something greater than us could have made us, no problem, or to believe that we evolved from, little single-celled amoebas or something like that. And as hard as that is for me to believe that I came from, a little amoeba, which the real problem I have with evolution is that, okay, an amoeba still has life, even though it's small, it still has life. Okay, where did that thing get its life from? Where did the original life come from? Suppose we evolved from slime or something like that has, or dirt, I don't know. Dirt's not alive. Dirt doesn't have life. Slime, I've never seen slime that, maybe a blob or whatever, but I've never seen slime that was alive. Where did the life come from? It had to start somewhere. It had to start somewhere. Somehow, in the process, life had to be created. It had to come from somewhere. Now, is it easier to believe that, it just happened by chance? Or that it was a plan? Or, people that subscribe to something like the Big Bang or something like that, that a bunch of gases came together and collided. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about that. That's about the extent of it. But where did the gases come from? Where did that stuff come from? That could come together and go boom and make the world. It had to come from somewhere. Was it just here? Is it just all luck? And all I want to point out is that, yeah, it takes faith to believe that God created the world. And it takes faith to believe that God is real. But it takes a whole lot of faith to believe that He's not. It takes a lot of faith to believe that He's not. And it just kills me that, you can look up and see that these people just totally get on Christianity, totally get on those who believe in God, by saying it's just not smart. It doesn't make sense. They're just thinking with their hearts, not using their brains. Because there's just too much faith. This just can't happen. You got to use logic. But yet here it is, and it takes faith to believe what they believe too. I mean, the very thing that they totally rip apart, my beliefs for, that's the very foundation of theirs. It's the very foundation of their beliefs. And they've basically made it into a contest of, well, you just pick. You want to have faith in this, or you want to have faith in this. And that's all it is. It's a pick 'em. If you don't believe me, go to the internet, type up web crawler, type up atheism, and the 5th or 6th hit down there, you'll come up with faith atheism, and you can punch it up and look, and it's right there. Guarantee it. Unless they change the internet every day, which I don't know if they do or not, but the web page will still be the same. That's all you got to do, and it'll say it. It'll say that we have faith in what we believe. We have faith that God does not exist. And what I ask, does it make more sense to just say, pick them? Just pick this or pick that? Or does it make more sense to have a little argument for, to have some proofs for? And it seems like science and religion are so, butting heads today. But that's not the way it was originally. I mean, most of the scientists that you read about, like in the books and stuff, they were Christians. If not, they at least attributed things to God. And one of the things I found interesting as I was reading, getting ready for this, is that Isaac Newton, the guy with the apple that fell on the 3 laws of gravity, one of his laws was the big law that was used to take God out of life. His law that says when something is going in a certain direction, it's going to stay going in that direction. It's not going to change. That was a big thing, to take God out of the equation. Well, if it's just going to keep on going, then you don't really need somebody to watch over it or take care of it. Well, his own law from his own mouth at the end of that had a little parentheses and it said, "But God is known to alter the system." So the very person that they use to take God out of the equation had him in there. And there's a lot of people like that, a lot of scientists like that. Galileo, Copernicus, a lot of famous guys that you don't really know what they did, but you just had to know them for a couple of names on a test when you were in school. They put God there. They thought God was real. Like I said, it's not really a big question, which side of the fence I fall on, since, like I said, I'm at a church. But yeah, I think He's real. I believe that in my heart. I believe in my heart that God's real, but I also think it makes sense. I also think that I can believe that with my brain. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's pretty logical. And the real thing is faith. I don't think faith is as much believing that God exists, as far as from a Christian perspective, is believing just that God exists as much as it is faith is believing that God will take care of you. If you look at faith from a biblical point of view, that's what faith is. It's believing that God's going to take care of you. It doesn't have as much to do with whether or not God exists. That's been brought in by other people. Do I believe He exists? Yeah. Do I believe He'll take care of me? Oh yeah, absolutely. But I have more than just, blind faith, more than just my heart that tells me that. I have my experiences that tell me that. I have my reason that tells me that. And the verse that I have Justin read for you talks about people who agree that God exists, who say, yeah, that God's real, but don't really do anything about it. Who go against their conscience and say, yes, God's real, but I don't want to have to do anything about it. And to be honest with you, I think there's more people that say that than that say that God doesn't exist. I think there's a lot more people that say that. There was a recent poll done that said 93% of Americans believe in God. That's only 7% that say no. Yeah, you can go outside and, walk down the street, turn on the TV, read your paper, find out there's a lot of people that sure don't live like there's a God. A lot more than 7%, it seems like. And the verse that I had him read, it says later on, since these people did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, He gave them over to a depraved mind, to do what ought not to be done. They have come filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed. No, we don't have none of that in our world, do we? Depravity. They're full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They're gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, boastful. They invent ways of doing wrong. They disobey their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, that not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. And I guess the point there is that if you're one of those people who are in the 93 percentile that say God is real, but yet you don't feel like you have to do anything about it, if you violate your conscience long enough, your conscience isn't going to bother you anymore. You know, I mean, if you go against your conscience long enough and do what you know is not right, then eventually you're going to get to a point where it's not going to bug you anymore. I mean, it's not going to be able to get a hold of you. It's not going to be able to catch you. And that's what the verse I had him read is about. It says that that God has made himself known. God has revealed himself to us. And you knew that. People know that. 93%. Seems to me that people agree. People know that. But yet they don't do anything about it. And if you violate your conscience long enough, it's not going to bug you anymore. It's not going to be there to help you out. And one other thing real quick, to those who say that yes, God is real and are trying to do something about it, are trying to mold your lives around that, Gandhi, Gandhi, like the famous Gandhi over in India that started Hinduism, or I don't know, like a big leader in it or whatever. Gandhi was coming over to America before he became famous, before everybody knew that this was Gandhi, Came over to America as a young guy and was visiting, in one of the southern states, like the deep south, and he tried to get into a church on Sunday morning. And, this was back I don't know how old Gandhi was when he died, but this had to be at least 60 or 70 years ago. And racial tensions were so high back then that they wouldn't let him in. This church wouldn't let him in. This is Gandhi. You can't kick out Gandhi. But it was before he was famous, and he was a little darker than the rest of the people, and they wouldn't let him in because he was Indian. And so, that was Gandhi's trip to church on Sunday. But he was doing an interview later on in life. And the interviewer was talking to him about Christianity, the difference between Christianity and Hinduism and all that stuff. And he was talking to him about what he believed. And he said, I thought about Christianity for a while. And the reason I rejected it wasn't really because I rejected what they believed. It wasn't really even because I rejected the fact that Jesus could have been my Savior. Looking back at it, I think I might actually believe that. I'm not really sure. The reason I never became a Christian, or never wanted to, was because of other Christians. One of the biggest things on the internet when I punched up atheism, one of the biggest complaints about the followers of God, besides that it's too much faith, it had nothing to do with God's characteristics, had nothing to do with God's attributes, but it had to do with the lack of character of those who claim to be God's followers. That's what most of it was about. I'll be honest with you. It really didn't have a lot to do with God. It had to do with the fact that those who say they follow him and believe in him don't live like it. Now, there's a verse in Hebrews chapter 12:14 that says, "Make every effort to live in peace with all men and to be holy." Basically, to do what's right. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. I guess my big question is, for those of you that believe in God, and those of you that honestly, sincerely want to do what he says, when non-believers look at your life, do they see God? Can they see God? I ask myself that. When people look at my life, can they see God in my life? Do I live at peace with all men? It doesn't say you have to live at peace with all men. It says make every effort. It grants that you're not going to get along with everybody. It says make every effort. To live at peace with all men and to be holy. They're not saying that we have to be perfect, because God knows that I'm not perfect. But there's a big difference between trying and failing and not even caring. There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between making an effort and falling short than not even giving a rip. And we need to watch our lives. Those of you who who are trying to do what God wants. You need to watch your life very closely, because even at those times where you slip up and we're not watching our lives, other people still are. And like I said, you're going to fail, but you better care. Let's pray. Dear God, I know you're real. I don't know everybody in this room, so I don't know what they think, but I hope they all think you're real. There's obviously a lot of people in the world that don't, and Father, I want to pray for them right now. I want to lift them up to you, that somehow that you would make yourself known to them, and that they would, their eyes would be open to see that. And I pray for those of us who already do believe that you're real, that we would try to do our best to live like it, and so just how real you are. Father, I hate the fact that I could look back and think that, people see how I live and just think that you're a big fat joke, because my life doesn't add up. And I just ask that you would help us to do our best to live for you and to do what your word says. And I pray all these things in the name of your Son. Amen.